How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to the Blue Shifting, and welcome back to Higurashi When They Cry, Chapter 4, Himatsubushi. Okay, so we are here. We just were able to rescue the kid so far. I don't know, like, technically Akatsuka passed out from injury, blood loss, and strain, and probably the fact that his adrenaline finally started to turn off because, like, he was out of, like, the imminent danger. So we're going to see how that pays out and can maybe see some of the resolution. We know it's not technically the solution because we're probably going to now be witnessing what I think is going to be the events of the dam, the death at the dam site, which is going to be kind of like the crowning jewel in this whole endeavor of making sure that the dam never gets built. So we're going to have to see how that plays out and I guess see how it's going to tie back into the rest of the story. And I wonder if we're going to learn anything more about Rika and the secondary, like, I don't know. I always called it a passenger or like a secondary, like, presence or personality or something. I doubt we're going to get an explanation for it because when has that ever explained anything in these Higurashi games? But I imagine we might get some type of information or tip about it, maybe. I don't know. All right. Regardless, let's jump right in and continue. My voice is cracking. I think I'm losing my voice. I don't know why. It feels like it's happening. So we'll see how I do. I might be coughing. I might be drinking lots of water, but I'll make it. All right, let's go. That was my first time losing consciousness. You often hear of regaining consciousness on top of a bed, but this was my first time actually experiencing it. Oh, Dr. Irie, he materialized from the darkness before the rest of the room did. But yeah, here we are in the hospital. I've lost consciousness a few times, but most of the time it's been through anesthesia. There was one time where it wasn't, and it was really, really weird because what happened was I heard a noise and I didn't know what it was and it freaked me out, but I was asleep at the time. So I woke up suddenly and jumped out of bed, like literally like immediately like got out of bed and rushed into the hallway to figure out what's going on. And you know how sometimes when you get up suddenly you can get really dizzy? I found the antithesis, the penultimate version of that, where I went from sleeping to immediately getting up and like moving quickly. And I like got up, got to the hallway, and then the next thing I know, I was just like having this kind of odd conversation with my wife. And she kept asking me, like, are you okay? How are you feeling? Are you okay? And I was like, I'm fine. Why do you keep asking me that? And she's like, it's because you passed out. And I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, you're like, you fell down onto the floor. And then I thought for a second, I was like, wait, why am I on the floor? And I was just like there. And I like realized like, I'm really dizzy. And my head kind of hurts. Because that's what happened. Is I got up, got into the hall to figure out what the noise was, and just blacked right out. Just crumpled. She said it was like watching a sack of potatoes just fall to the ground, just like just down. And I apparently didn't respond for a few seconds, and then I kind of slowly climbed back out of it. But yeah, that was definitely not good. And I did talk to the doctor about it. But it wasn't hard to figure out. The reason is I have anemia. I'd gone from a rested state because I have anemia and I have low blood pressure. So the two put together, neither of which is like in dangerous levels, but you combine the two, it can be a little potent. So I had been resting deeply, so my heart rate was really low. I then woke up suddenly and got up. So my heart rate suddenly accelerated, but like my blood pressure was low. And then I got up quickly, which makes all the blood drain from your head. And that was just like wombo combo, boom, on the floor. So yeah, no, like it's weird to just suddenly go unconscious because for me, my experience of consciousness went from me being standing in the hallway to on the floor, but it took me like a minute to realize I was laying down on the floor. I just wasn't aware of my surroundings very much, and like nothing, like it was all just a haze. It just didn't compute. It was very strange. Anyway, hello, doctor.
大丈夫ですか?
Realizing I was awake, the young doctor called out to me. I didn't intend to respond, but it seemed my body language had told him I was conscious. My head was wrapped in bandages. The scratches all over my body had also been treated. My sense of pain also returned with my consciousness, causing me to groan from the intense pain shooting all throughout me.
起きないで横になっていてください. 頭をだいぶ殴られたようですからね。
Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot about the guy hitting us with a rock.
24時間は特に安静にして容体を見守りたいところです。
Honestly, we're probably lucky to be alive.
ここは
私の診療所です。入江と申します。よろしく。
I remembered that this young doctor was the one in the car heading the opposite way earlier.
誰かいませんか、大石さんは。
あ、呼んできましょう。診療所の中は禁煙なんで、表で吸ってもらってるんです。
Now, I think this is good, and Dr. Irie seems to be alright, because even if he won't admit it, obviously he was concerned about the kid. I imagine he won't mind that we were there to try and help him. I also think it's interesting too, because like, if you think about it, whilst it was a really bold attempt for the kid to try and like find a way to potentially escape using Dr. Irie, inadvertently, he actually did save himself with Dr. Irie, because the fact that a car was coming down from that valley and it was the doctor was suspicious enough that immediately it kind of pointed us in exactly the direction we needed to go. So kudos to the kid. He actually pulls it off in a way. He just might not realize it. Dr. Irie left the room to go call Ooichi. The scenery outside the window was tinted with gold. The pouring rain had stopped, with the voices of Higurashi heralding the cooling temperature. I felt that the tone of the Higurashi's voice was comforting. Eventually, I could hear heavy footsteps coming closer, which I reckoned to be Ooichi's. The fog that was enveloping my head slowly faded back to reality. What had happened since then? What had happened to the boy? What about the reinforcements from Tokyo? The door to the room flew open, allowing Dr. Irie and Ooichi to enter.
じゃあ命に別状はないんでしょ？
ないとお約束はできません。
He did get shot.
頭に受けた傷は初見だけでは判断が危険なのです。
わかりましたわかりました。ちょいと彼と二人で話がしたいんですが、よろしいですかね？
ええ、どうぞ。何かありましたらお呼びください。
Alright. Excuse me. Ooichi, after basically forcing Dr. Irie outside, shut the door.
いかがですかお具合は？
慣れないことをしたんで全身がボロボロです。
Ooichi brought over a folding chair that was leaning against the wall and sat down beside the bed.
犯人たちは逮捕されましたか？
残念ながら。
Ah, that makes sense though. It's better to get the kid out, get the safety than arrest them.
とっくに県外へ逃げたか、村人にかくまわれているかのどちらかでしょうね。まあ、逃がしゃしませんが。
大臣の孫は？
署で保護しています。
Good.
ただ、東京のあなたのご同僚から一切の聴取は取るなと釘を刺されたらしいですよ。
Of course.
しげちゃんが憤慨してましたっけ？
The kidnapping was a confidential matter, so his custody was also probably being kept under wraps. How the kidnapping of a minister's grandson would be handled, how it would be covered up, treated like it never happened, would be handled by the brass. If this case ended without a nation going in an uproar about it, then our job had been done. The possibility that the minister had negotiated with the perpetrators couldn't be ruled out, but something like that was no longer my concern. My role in the case was over.
ご迷惑をおかけします。公安ってやつはいやらしいところだって思ってるでしょ。
思いません思いません。お互い日の丸から給金もらって仕事してるだけですよ。
Ooichi laughed boisterously. When we first met, I was somewhat prejudiced against Ooichi, but now that that feeling was completely gone.
今回の事件、隠さないで大事にしてくれた方がこっちは都合がいいんですけどね。そうすれば黒幕の園崎本家に少しは迫れるんですが。
Yeah, it's too bad. That's the big downside for him, is that he can't pursue it.
まあ適当に迫ったところで圧力がかかるんでしょうがね。やれやれです。
At least the kid's safe, though.
大石さんは園崎本家に今後も戦いを？
まさか。いろいろと黒い噂こそ絶えませんがね。園崎家に恨みがあるわけじゃありませんので。
Not yet, you don't.
君子危うきに近寄らない方がいいんですよ。ね。
Ooichi laughed happily. I couldn't help but laugh along.
あ、そうだそうだ。 さっき県警から署に連絡があったそうです。あなたのご同僚が名古屋に到着したそうで、今車でこちらへ向かっているそうです。
Good.
あなたは名誉の負傷ですから東京へ引き上げだそうですよ。
I mean, that's very fair.
そんなわけです。はあ、お疲れ様でした。あなたの沖宮での仕事は無事終了です。
Honestly, thank freaking goodness. Get me out of here. I was being recalled to Tokyo. I inadvertently breathed a sigh of relief when I heard those words.
大石さんのご協力に、あなたに支払った協力金は無駄にはなりませんでしたね。
Nice.
あら、冗談のつもりだったんだけどな。
Ooichi took out his wallet, casually pulled out several large bills, and jammed them into the breast pocket of my shirt.
これは協力金の返済じゃないですよ。私からあなたへのお小遣いです。
That's actually kind of funny, because if it was refunded, he would give the money back to the public safety committee or public safety division. Instead, Ooichi's saying, "Take this yourself." He's basically giving his bribe. No, it's not bribe. Bribe's a dirty word. His collaboration money back to him as personal funds.
この辺は地酒がうまいんでね。東京へのお土産にこいつで買っていくといいでしょ
う。Ooichi flashed me a grin.
もしもあなたの傷が軽いようなら、東京へ帰る前にぜひ声をかけてくださいよ。
Okay.
林さんも佐藤さんもぜひあなたともう一度宅を囲みたいと言ってましたからね。
Not that we'll see the old man. I don't think he's surviving the night.
やれやれ。参ったな。
今度はこっちも小細工抜きです。純粋に楽しもうじゃないですか。
よく言いますよ。現職の警官があんなに恋様ができるなんて。世も末です。
私どもとね、対等以上に打てるメンツにはなかなかお会いできないもんです。あなたが東京に帰るのが惜しいですよ。
When I heard those words, going back to Tokyo from Ooichi, I was reminded once again that I was relieved from my duties. Soon Yuki would be giving birth. It might still be possible to attend a delivery I had at one time given up on. When I thought that, the pain from my injuries became trivial. I wanted to hurry back to Tokyo and see my Yuki at once.
少し傷が重いふりをして沖宮にしばらく滞在しません？いいお店をいろいろ紹介しますよ。もちろんおごれなんて言いません。
I'd be like, no way, Jose. I got a baby to get to.
申し訳ないですが、それはまたの機会にします。妻の出産日が近いんでね。早く帰りたいんです。
ありゃりゃ。それは知らなかった。それじゃあこんなとこにいちゃいけない。早く帰らないといけません。
Good man, Ooichi. For a while after that, Ooichi asked all sorts of questions about my wife, teasing and bantering with me.
さて、具合はどうです？おきれいそうですか？
ええ。おかげさまで悪くないです。立って歩いても全然平気ですよ。
I stood up and shuffled around for a bit, which seemed to amuse Ooichi.
いえいえ。Hinamizawaの病院では落ち着かないでしょうと思いまして。
Yeah, I was a little worried about that too. I'd also be like, let's get out of here so we're not like in imminent danger.
入江の先生は一晩泊まらせたいみたいなこと言ってますが、犯人もまだ捕まってませんし。
Yeah.
一応ここはあなたにとっては敵地になりますからね。
この病院は安全ではない。
I mean,
どういうことですか
？It's not like it has like intense and like devoted security and even if they have security, it's not like they're not impervious, being told to look the other way.
まあ、入江の先生も多少は社会的信用のあるお人です。ここにいる限りは何もないとは思いますが、赤坂さんの気分的にめいらないかというのが問題ですね。
I'd relaxed for a bit now that things had progressed this far, but it was exactly as Ooichi had said. When I realized that this was enemy territory, I suddenly felt uncomfortable. With leaving behind only the only thing left for me to do, the chance that I would come to harm was logically fairly low. But that didn't mean I was completely safe.
そうですね。横になっているだけなら、ホテルのベッドと同じな気がします。
そうでしょう。私もその方がいいと思います。
At the moment, I caught a glimpse of the clock over Ooichi's shoulder. It was evening. The hours I could call Yuki at the hospital were almost over. I wanted to tell her as quickly as possible that I would be back soon at her side.
ちょっと、雪江の病院に電話してきます。ロビーに公衆電話とかはありませんか？
新婚さんはそういうの豆だな。確か会計の脇にあったと思います。ここで待ってますから、いってらっしゃい、いってらっしゃい。
Ooichi, laughing while saying he was jealous, opened the window and pulled out a cigarette even while he was in a hospital room. Ooichi, come on. Appreciative of how considerate Ooichi was, I set out to the lobby to find the phone. The lobby was just a short distance down the hallway from the hospital room. I thought the hospital was a bit too grand for a village like this, but of course it was nothing compared to the general hospital Yuki was admitted to. Running inside a hospital wasn't the best of manners, but calling hours would soon end, so I dashed over in a hurry. There was nobody else in the lobby. It may have been the evening, but there was nobody at the reception desk. Well, this might actually be lucky for me. I wasn't planning to have a conversation to feel guilty about, but it would still be embarrassing to have somebody listen to a conversation between me and Yuki. Taking a quick look around, I soon found the payphone. Digging around in my pockets, I grabbed a few coins. Man, imagine the days where it was common to put some coins in your pocket, if nothing else, then in case you need to make a phone call. Definitely not my generation. I was calling Tokyo from here, so I would burn through this amount fairly quickly. I picked up the receiver and inserted a coin, then dialed the number for Yuki's hospital, which I had completely memorized at this point. The number for Yuki's hospital had a lot of 8s and 9s, so dialing it inevitably took some time. Normally, it wouldn't be a big deal, but currently, any time was precious. So it's the rotator style phones. Man, that's kind of cool. However, I felt like something was strange as I was dialing the number. I don't know exactly how to put it, but it was as if the receiver was too quiet. That unique white noise from the telephone line wasn't there. Somehow, I felt like I wasn't getting any feedback from the phone, and without feeling a response, I hung up the receiver to try again. The coin popped out of the return slot. I reinserted the coin and began dialing once again, but the receiver was still dead silent.
なんだこれ。断線でもしてるのかな。
While I was wasting time like this, the amount I had to spend talking with Yuki shrunk. I began to feel needlessly impatient.
すみません。
I felt the presence of someone on the other side of the glass, so I called out. There was an immediate response. A man who seemed like a pharmacist came over.
はいはい。どうなさいましたか？
すみません。この電話の調子がおかしくて、ちょっと見てもらえますか？
The man came over and tried testing various things with the receiver pressed to his ear. Come to think of it, this was somebody who worked at the hospital, not someone from the phone company. Just that I didn't know much about phones, neither would he.
あれ？なんだこれ？
The man held up the cord that connected the phone to the wall. It was completely severed. Oh, that's a bad sign.
なんだこれ？参ったな。
A dilly of a pickle? Who says that?
これじゃ電話会社の人に直してもらわないとどうにもならないですね。
Hey Ooichi, can we leave like yesterday?
電話でしたら事務室のを使います？
I didn't want the people in the hospital office around when I was talking.
近所に公衆電話はありませんか？
ここを出て道なりに行くと商店街に出ます。
Don't do it.
そこのどこかの角のタバコ屋にあったような気がするな。
Don't do it.
行けば見つけられると思いますよ。
I was dressed in a hospital gown. I was wearing sandals on my feet. My head was wrapped in bandages. Just looking at me, you could tell I was a hospital patient. No matter how you looked at it, I was not dressed to be wandering outside. But that's when the impetuousness of youth came in. Choosing the chance to talk to Yuki for even a little longer, I headed outside in my current state. Why wouldn't you tell Ooichi? At least ask him to come with you. Good grief, man. Survival instincts of a freaking kitten. Following the road to the shopping district. Should be able to find one soon enough. With only those two lines as my guide, I ran outside the gate of the hospital. You idiot. With the village nestled in the valley, when the sun set, it got dark quickly. The sparse streetlights lit up enough to start attracting moths. The Higurashi, known from time for their chorus, was soon at a close, redoubled their fragile cries. Finding the payphone wasn't as easy as the person at the hospital had suggested. Was it still up ahead? Did I miss it already? Was I just getting further away? If I didn't know this guy survives, I would assume he's about to die. Just as I thought I was about to be crushed by the weight of uncertainty towering over me, I found a shop in the corner with cigarettes written on it with a small sign. My joy spurred me onwards. Just as I heard at the hospital, sat next to the counter of the cigarette shop was an antiquated payphone. I wasn't wearing a watch, so I didn't know what time it was. I probably didn't have much left, though. But it was enough. Just as long as I could tell Yuki my job was done, I would be coming home soon. Picking up the receiver, I slid a coin down the slot. But I felt like something was strange, just like at the hospital. Even after inserting the coin, the phone showed no response. I hung up the receiver and tried putting the coin in one more time. But there was nothing. There was absolutely no response. This phone was dead. I couldn't be. Thinking that, I felt along the cord that protruded from the back of the phone. Doing that, my hand found the end as a completely severed line. You idiot. What is this? Having now had the same thing happen twice, my bafflement was accompanied by a sense of unease. I would have been uneasy at the first time. It seems that this cord had been severed cleanly by a sharp blade of some sort. And I may be mistaken, but it didn't look like much time had passed since it was cut.
すみません。
Run!
すみません。
Opening up the booth window to the tobacco shop, I looked for someone in the dimly lit interior. Eventually, there was sounds of somebody plodding down some stairs, and an old lady appeared. The old lady's plodding a lethargic step for some reason only served to make me more frantic.
タバコですかいね。小さまでねんと、わがねのしゃ。
タバコを買いたいわけじゃないんです。この電話が。
Realizing that saying the phone was broken and asking them to take a look at it was going to get me nowhere, I swallowed back my words.
この電話が壊れてるみたいなんで、別の公衆電話があるところを教えてもらいたいのですが。
The old lady moved her jaw up and down slowly as if chewing on the meaning of my words. It seemed that she wouldn't understand until she digested things thoroughly.
電話、壊れてますかいね。そんな難儀だわ。
Who says that? Oh gosh, like, get out of there, dude. This is screaming you're gonna die.
他の公衆電話を当たってください。
The old lady directly told me another payphone that seemed quite a ways away. Her way of telling me was so long-winded that I inadvertently started to get impatient. At that moment, I spotted a clock in the dim interior of the store. The minute hand was just about to point straight up. Even if there was a phone right here that I could use, I'd only be able to tell Yuki goodnight with the time I had left. On top of that, my destination was a remote payphone which I didn't know the exact distance to. If it was a normal state of mind, deciding to give up the phone today would have been the natural thought process. But at that moment, I had been somewhat stubborn for some reason. Unable to use the phone in the hospital and coming out here and still being unable to use one. There was no mistaking that I had become quite insistent on using a phone.
どうもありがとうございます。その電話ボックス、探してみます。
Refuting her offer to draw me a map, I left the tobacco shop. Dude, go back to the hospital. According to the old lady, even though the phone booth was quite far off, it would be easy to find. Why? He just wants to die, doesn't he? Like he's just suicidal at this point. If I just followed this road straight down, I'd eventually find it. Sandals flapping as I ran, I couldn't help but laugh at myself. I'll admit that I was quite steadfast about calling Yuki. But there was days when I was tired or busy when I wouldn't call her. Even today, my entire body was covered with injuries and I'm dead tired. And on top of that, there wasn't much time left. It wouldn't be that strange at all if today was the one of those days I didn't call her. But having twice been foiled trying to call her, I'd become hot-headed about it. Was I like a dog who was being told to stay with a piece of food dangling in my face?
何やってんだろうな。
What are you doing? Even so, I somehow couldn't quell this uneasy feeling sitting in the pit of my stomach because there's some part of you is not stupid. It was like that with the hospital phone, the same with the one at the tobacco shop. Both cords were definitely not severed from being frayed by long years of use. The clean cuts indicated that someone had taken something sharp and deliberately cut them. But who, and for what reason? The more I thought about it, the more uneasy I felt, so I tried to push that thought aside. Why? Keiichi had a better survival instincts than you, buddy. And he's a freaking kid. How much did I run so far? The scenery around me is much longer than that of a shopping district, with residential buildings scattered about the lonely road. The surroundings had already grown dark. I was blatantly out too far for a quick phone call, and it was quite obvious I was far removed from the hospital. I recalled the clock I saw at the tobacco shop. It might almost be time. I had run for quite a bit, so my breathing had gone quite ragged. If I had just wanted to hear Yuki's voice, I should have just thrown away the reservation to borrow the phone in the office. I regretted it a little. Well then, it was about time. Was it time to give up? Yes. Just when I thought that, but I saw a light in front of me. I finally found it. It was a phone booth. It seemed that the light of the phone booth had recently been changed, as it shone with a vivid white light. Although the gloom of Hinamizawa is nothing more than gathering spots for moths. But in any case, I had finally found it. And my hand touched the door of the phone booth, I realized I was breathing and sweating heavily. I didn't know what time it was right now, but even if it was just for a moment, I might be able to get in touch with Yuki. Since I had spent all this effort getting here, turning back without ever giving it a try was out of the question. Before I picked up the receiver, another wave of uneasiness washed over me. I was worried that the phone cord might be severed as well. How was the phone cord in this phone booth? Squatting down, I followed the bundle of cables as I ran along the corner into the ceiling, and at a glance, nothing was out of the ordinary. I ran my fingers as far as I could along the line to check it out. The only thing they found was a thick layer of dust. Nothing out of the ordinary. I wonder if this was popular in Hinamizawa to cut cords of payphones as some sort of tasteless prank. It might be prudent to talk to Ooichi-san about this later. Even if it was nothing more than a prank, it was still vandalism of public property. In any case, this one was fine, this time. Blowing out a coin from my pocket with one hand, I picked up the receiver with the other. But this time, before the receiver even reached my ear, I felt something was off. The receiver was light. It was more than slightly unpleasant feeling. It was almost sickening. To verify the source of my displeasure, I peered at the receiver in my hand with a measure of reluctance.
なんだよ。これ。
This is like your idiocy screaming at you that you should have left a long time ago. The coiled cord that connected the receiver to the rest of the phone had been ripped apart, and the tip of the cable swayed in the air. It was all I could do to restrain myself as a raw and unpleasant feeling worked its way up in the small of my back. It was the type of dread. At that moment, I heard a crunch of somebody stepping on gravel. The light was reflecting off of the glass walls of the booth, leaving me unable to see outside into the darkness. I steeled myself and stepped out of the phone booth. The inside of the booth was lit with that strong light, which might have made it warmer in there. Just stepping outside, I could feel the chill wash over me. And there was the silhouette of a person. A small silhouette.
君は
The long hair, that silhouette was blown about by the cool breeze. Is this Rika? What on earth is she? Is she gonna kill us? Or try to?
怪我人が病院を抜け出してはいけないのですよ。
She's right. Somewhere in my head, I knew that who this girl was. I didn't have a basis for it, but I knew that she was that girl.
ねえ、赤坂。
She, Rika Furude, said that almost like it was a warning.
君が電話のコードを。
Her expression remained unchanged, and my question was left unanswered. No, and yes. I don't think she did it, but she knows who did, or at least understands why it was done. In other words, no response. Regardless, I felt like she had affirmed my suspicions.
どうしてこんなことをするんだ。どうして
The last word had a tinge of anger behind it. I frantically tried to smooth things out, but she didn't seem very afraid.
もうどうにもならないことです。
I interpreted her words as meaning that I wasn't going to be in time for calling hours at the hospital. But thinking about it, that would have been a strange thing to say. Why would she know something like that? I could take what she had said to have any other meaning. She just stood there like a mannequin, not even moving an inch. Almost to the point that if the wind wasn't occasionally rustling through her long hair, there would be an illusion that time had stopped.
赤坂が私を気味悪く思っているのがよくわかる。
I mean, only in the sense that you say very strange, cryptic things that doesn't seem like a child would say.
ああ、いや、そんなことないよ。
Liar. My denial came out almost like a bad piece composed for a poetry slam. But her words were right on the mark. I'd always felt something ominous and uncanny about her. Ever since her strange threats at the shrine. Oh no. She had noticed that my expression was contrary to my words, seemingly laughed at the gap between them.
赤坂の怖がり。
Yeah, there she is. Who is that?
怖がってなんかいないよ。
Being laughed at by a small child didn't sit well with me. So I said that.
もう電話を探しても手遅れの時間です。
そうだな。
She didn't even have to say it. I was absolutely too late. I might have already missed calling hours even by the time I reached this phone booth. I was too late, had no option but to give up for today. Once I decided that, my unhealthy obsession with phones suddenly faded. Oh, that's weird. Yeah, maybe the obsession of phones maybe that's like, if there's a curse that influences people, That could explain other things too. We've seen in other paths where Keiichi or other people seem to get just like hyper fixated on a specific idea or specific concept, and that hyperfixation manifests in odd ways and somehow gets incorporated into like the manifestations that we see. And I wonder if we see it in other people too. Like I know Rena, she gets hyperfixated on her like treasures and cuteness. But not just that, it's also like when Keiichi, especially in the first chapter, when he's like getting paranoid, he gets hyperfixated on like certain sounds or feeling like somebody's watching him, right? Maybe this obsession with the phones and the chain of broken phones, like it feels too odd to be a coincidence that that not only does he become obsessed with the idea of like talking on the phone, but that he also is being led on a daisy chain of broken phones. And all the people kept saying like, dither of a pickle or whatever that saying was that they said. That strange obsession now gone, I began to laugh at how hopeless I was. I mean, just look at what I was wearing. It wasn't normal. A hospital gown and sandals. My head was wrapped in bandages and my body completely soaked in sweat. I was wondering that the old lady at the tobacco shop wasn't surprised to see me. Actually, that's a good point. Why wasn't she more surprised to see you and asking questions about it? With waiting to hear Yuki's voice as my motive, I traipsed around the town the entire evening. I didn't know whether to call it follies of youth or simply plain and embarrassing. In any case, it was all I could do but laugh at myself.
もうこれで今夜赤坂がすることは何もないです。
I don't like that.
そうだな。もう何もないよ。おとなしく病院へ引き上げるさ。
それがいいのですよ。病院への道はわかるつもりだよ。
She waved her little hand and began to head back the way I came. She began to follow alongside me. Looking at her face, I could see that she wore a mischievous smile, as if she was extremely interested in whether or not I would get lost.
リカちゃんの家もこっちの方向なのかい？
なのですよ。
こんな時間に一人で表を歩いてると、ご両親に怒られたりしないかい？
別に怒られませんです。今日はご両親は忙しい日なので、僕のことなど忘れていますですよ。
You're busy today at the dam site?
それでも帰った方がいい。きっと怒るよ。
それでも赤坂とおしゃべりする方が面白いのでいいのです。
Uh-huh. She had said that with a face free from worry, and she looked up at me once more and smiled. When she showed me that smile, the eerie feeling surrounding her faded. But even then, she was still a mystery to me as ever. Mysterious to me. We arrived at the corner I had turned at earlier, but it was also much darker than before, and with the point of view changed on the return trip, I wasn't very confident this actually was the corner I turned at. This is one thing I am fairly confident with. Like, it's not always perfect, obviously, but I usually have a decent sense of visual direction, so if I travel down a path once, I can usually recreate it. I'm usually not a fan of relying on just my memory every time, but I am much better at like retracing my steps than I would be at reading a map, for instance. There's no mistake, it had to be this corner. As I began to move my feet again, the girl grabbed onto my clothes.
赤坂は病院へ戻るのではないのですか?
Interesting. Okay, hang on. She's trying to direct us here. There's two things I can think of here. Is number one, she's just purposely trying to guide us, right? That's a possibility. And if I believed that he actually was going to meet a grisly end of some kind, that's what I would assume is going to happen here. But because I don't think that's actually what's going to happen, I wonder if Rika is intervening over the curse. If she's the guardian of the evil spirit, right? Maybe she can feel like the curse. If the curse is real, she might be in tune with it, right? If she is, what if she actually is here to guide us back, to prevent us from falling into like the happenstance of a curse and just dying? Maybe she's here to protect us somehow.
もちろん戻るつもりだよ。道間違えた?
A short moment of silence. Eventually, still holding onto my clothes, she began to walk. It was the beginning of a walk to the hospital this mysterious girl would take me on. Interesting. What in the earth is happening? So he's talking as if he will get to the hospital at the end of this, but I'm guessing we're taking a different route.
電話のコードを切って回ってたの。リカちゃんだろ。
Oh.
ダメだよ。もうしちゃ。
僕には何のことかよくわかりませんのですよ。
本当にかい？
She tried to play dumb, but it was written all over her face.
ニパー。
You can't just nipa your way out of this. Because obviously she was trying to laugh it off, but that adorable smile of hers just made me want to forgive her. I'm going to be a horrible father, aren't I? A momentary lapse of tension was erased by her next words. Oh boy.
孫、無事に見つかってよかったです。
Yep. Unable to respond right away, I sunk into silence. I had already learned this from Sato-san's info, didn't I? The girl, no, this entire village knew everything since the moment I set foot in it. I considered playing dumb, but in the end I chose not to. With everything being known already, there's no point in me feigning ignorance.
なんとかね。
それはよかったです。これで東京に帰れますですよ。
ありがと
赤坂の怪我はひどいのですか？
う。さあ、ひどいのかどうか、医者の診察を聞いてないからわからないな。
I mean, he's walking around. They're probably not great. I mean, head trauma is always bad, but I doubt he has a concussion, which probably means he's fine. Huh? Come to think of it, I vaguely remember being told to lay down and take it easy for at least 24 hours. Oh, maybe he does have a concussion. Did that mean bed rest?
怪我人は病院を抜け出してはいけないのですよ。
That's true.
電話のコードだって切っちゃいけないんだぞ。
みー。僕には何のことやらわからないのです。
じゃあこっちだって何のことかわからないや。
As we're playing dumb with each other, we both laughed at the same time. If somebody saw us laughing at each other like this, it'd probably bring the smile to their lips.
赤坂が生きてこの村を出られる確率は決して高くありませんでした。
Yeah, that's true.
僕は赤坂に死んでほしくはないので、生きて村を出ることができて嬉しいです。
Oh, was he maybe being considered for execution, but because of the way things played out, maybe they're going to go after the dam site leader instead?
リカちゃん、最初っから私の正体は知ってたんだろ？
She said nothing but gave a firm nod.
なら、分かっていると思うけど、私たちはこの村の、どちらかというと、敵の部類に入ると思う。
Yeah, I think that's what this story is going to lead it to, is that like basically it was either him or the dam site person they were going to take out. And I think if he hadn't found the kid today, it would have been him. But because he got embroiled in all of that, it would be a little too much if he just suddenly dies right at the last second. So instead they're going after the dam site person tonight. I think that's what it was. I think he was like a hair's breadth from being the sacrifice.
なのに君はいろいろと忠告してくれたね。
That's right. She said it at the time. She wouldn't warn somebody that she was okay with dying. She definitely said something like that.
なら、私は君に感謝するべきなのかもしれないね。
感謝した方がいいのですよ。僕は命の恩人なのです。
I'm your savior. Saying that, she puffed up her chest proudly. She said that jokingly, but the meaning behind those words was quite heavy. That was because whether I lived or died was a decision that might have been made in a place unbeknownst to me. She said those words with such an adorable smile, it took me a few moments of silence for their weight to settle in. In fact, so maybe she cut the phone lines. Oh, wait a minute. Wait. Okay. I was about to say, there's a theory I'm just posing up right now. That's that Rika-chan orchestrated some things to try and keep him alive. Maybe he is primary target number one still, but the time has passed and now it's not going to be him. Why? Two factors. Number one, I think that the initial strike on him was going to happen at the hospital. The hospital was really clear. Even the person in the office was like hiding away in the back. Only came out when he called for them. Then you have the oddity of the phone line being cut, right? And then and then him being directed to the smoke shop where that phone was cut, and then him being directed from there basically across town to the phone booth, which had been mangled. Now, we also take into account a few other factors, right? it's been hinted at somehow that Rika is involved or supposed to be guardian of Oyashiro-sama, right? He's like the source of the curse, right? So then what are we seeing happening tonight? There's some interesting oddities that we can kind of put together. If the hit was supposed to take place at him while he was in the hospital, try and catch him off guard. Instead, where he was going to be isolated in a time where it might be opportunistic, the phone line's cut. And then he gets a sudden, like, mad urge to go running out inside, which is just crazy. Like, no sane person in his state would ever do that. He did it anyway. And he felt like that maddening push that pushed him out into the smoke shop and then pushed him out into this place across town, right? And everybody whom we talked to at the time didn't seem surprised by us, and they both said that weird sign about like what a dither of a pickle or whatever that phrase was, right? That all makes it feel like it's all tied together. If we do attribute these odd feelings and attributes to the curse, it almost feels like the curse was, instead of being guiding us to death, what if instead it was guiding us away from where we were going to be, taken and executed? Almost like we were being pulled away from where we were in danger, which was the hospital. Normally we wouldn't be in danger there, but maybe that's what happened. Maybe she could pull us away rather than that. She's calling herself our savior. It was close. There was a good chance we wouldn't leave the town alive, but now we will. Maybe because the attempt to grab us failed because we were gone. Ooichi might have left to try and find us, thinking that he couldn't be the target. And so then they've defaulted to their next plan, which is at the damn site to get the damn site, like, one dude. Once they chose who was going to die, and once that person is designated for that death, then no longer is anybody else going to be in danger because they don't want to draw too much suspicion because they can't pin it on the curse anymore. So perhaps Rika-chan orchestrated this entire chain of events just to make sure we were taken away from the place where we were going to be targeted. That would be interesting, because if that's the case, then she's using the powers that we see of the curse to save somebody. And that's if we are assuming that she is somehow able to control the curse. But it does seem really odd, doesn't it? Like, these things that we're seeing are telltale signs that normally lead somebody into a death cycle rather than out of it. But if that's true, then doesn't that mean Rika-chan's been behind everything that's happened in all the routes that we've done? But then that's odd too, because in chapter 3, we found her dead. Why would she die if she's in charge of the curse? The only reason I could think of is if she somehow chose to sacrifice herself in order to save somebody else. And maybe she would be willing to do that for Sachiko. Okay. All right, so if the curse is real, I'm going to postulate that Rika is really involved with it somehow, because it almost feels like she seems in control of some of this stuff. I feel like but that's the problem. The only way this works is if the curse is 100% legitimate, and that is something that's hard for me to accept. But weirdness is just, I can't think of anything else that would explain what's happening here. I'd been to this place before. The Guardian's office was there. It was the stone steps leading to the Furude Shrine. When I passed by it before, I was focused on finding a phone booth. I hadn't realized where I was.
確か、この神社がリカちゃんの家だったよね。
まあ、そんなものです。
Looking up at the shrine grounds, it was brightly lit and energetic voices could be heard. What was going on?
今日はお祭りの日なのですよ。
Watanagashi tonight. Of course, it's the night of Watanagashi.
お祭り？
Hinamizawa村の唯一で一番のお祭り。Watanagashiのお祭りです。
Yeah, it is happening tonight.
Watanagashi?
And he was the sacrifice initially.
祭りなんて名ばかりのつまらないものですよ。見ますですか?
She asked bluntly. But seeing that I looked interested, she climbed a couple steps and motioned for me to come. I was only going to go back to sleep anyways. If I had nothing else to do, it might not be a bad idea to go with her on a little detour. In the hostile territory that was this village, I don't know what would happen if I ventured down the side road without Ooichi. Even though I thought the village like that when I was with this girl, I forgot all about it. In any case, even without anything to back it up, I felt as if that as long as I was with her, none of the ill will from the village would befall me. That's why, even though I knew my cover was blown, I strangely had no qualms about setting foot into the heart of the Onagafuchi Guardian's territory. Climbing up to the grounds of the shrine, I could sense there were about 3 pavilions set up, with meeting tables and folding chairs. The old folks in the village know the executives of the Guardians were already quite drunkenly sharing another round of drinks. I could only see it as the people in the village council drank while enjoying the evening air. At the very least, it was certainly quiet and quite different than any festival I'd ever seen.
ね、つまんないお祭りでしょ。
Interesting, so it's gonna get much bigger, because in the future it definitely is a much more, like, popular affair.
これは確かにお祭りには見えないね。
大昔からずっと続いてきたお祭りですが、見ての通り、すっかり錆びれてしまったのですよ。
As if to chide the old folks, she said that while looking at them with an exasperated expression. You really couldn't call this a festival anymore. It was just a bunch of neighbors getting together to drink under the guise of a festival. I mean, that's not a bad thing.
これじゃ祀られる神様も気の毒だな。
こんなみっともないお祭りも、5、6年もすると村中が総出でやってきて。
I mean, you're not wrong. And again, this is like that strange change of face. Is she speaking for Ogashiro-sama now?
ちゃんと儀式も真面目にやる立派なお祭りになるのですよ。
What she said was not much wishful thinking, as it was telling of a future that had already been determined. She wasn't even predicting it. It was almost like she was simply reporting the results. That's how it sounded. Even though it was a baseless speculation, the way she said it wouldn't let me interject. It was the same way she talked when she changed. While I struggled to find the words to reply to her, she wandered over to the other side of the grounds, not minding me at all. Not in a state where I could afford to be left behind, I hurriedly followed after her. Passing through the copse of pine trees, the strong and cool breeze ruffled my hair. There, from that one evening, was the splendid observation platform the girl had showed me. There it is. As it had grown completely dark and the modest lights littering across the nightscape were providing a different type of scenery.
こうし
Beautiful.
て眺めると、この村ものどかそうに見えますのです。
She said that with an indifferent look on her face.
君は先日、この村は絶対にダムに沈むことはないと、そう断言したね。
She didn't reply, seemingly relishing in the feeling of the wind blowing through her hair.
あれは、あの時点でもう、大臣が要求に応じていたという意味だったんだね。
She spun around, her gaze meeting mine. But she said nothing. She spoke nothing that would neither confirm nor deny what I just said.
多分、今回の事件は、闇から闇へ葬られる。本庁上層部は、多分、大臣のスキャンダルが公になってトラブルになることを望まないと思う。
さもないと、孫を殺すぞと脅したに違いないのです。
Yeah, and they would have done it too.
で、大臣との交渉が成功し、孫は解放された。
And the grandson was released in a way that inadvertently makes it feel like it was best to keep it quiet.
孫を助けたのは赤坂ですよ。
どうだろう。発端となったあの財布の発見。あれ自体がすでに
Yeah.
できすぎだったように思う。
Ever since the moment that wallet was discovered, I'd felt something was odd. Ooichi said it as well. That the Sonozaki family had given the order to release the hostage. Meaning that our little manhunt was a farce to begin with. Come to think of it, it was punched, kicked, and had a gun pointed at me. It felt like they did put up quite a fight, but they may have been all part of a good performance. Once the negotiations were successful, they could just say, "Here you go," and return the magistrate's grandson right to his doorstep. They knew that public safety had realized the kidnapping case and were moving in on it. That's why, due to the actions of public safety, the grandson was able to be rescued safely. So the minister didn't give in to any unreasonable demands. That type of performance was necessary.
僕には難しいことはよくわかりません。
Uh-huh.
同感だな。私にだって難しいことはよくわからない。だが、一つ確実なことがある。君が言った通りってことさ。この村はダム湖になんか沈まない。 ダム計画なんて、そのうちなくなってしまうってことさ。
Yeah, well, that wasn't something an officer of the law should be saying. But I naturally let those words slip from my mouth. The village may have stirred up all sorts of trouble, but that was because they were protecting their homes. If someone just decided by themselves that they had to leave the house I was used to living in, I would resent them as well. On top of that, it wasn't a place like mine where I could just happen to be renting it, but a place that their families had lived in for generations. It might be ignorant to call these desperate resistances an overreaction. It might not be really qualified to criticize politics or bureaucracy, but deliberately building a dam on land that was loved by its residents wasn't something I could get behind.
でも、よかったじゃないか。
Oh,
どうしてですか？
what a picture this is, but...
少なくともこれで、この村に平和が戻るよ。
About that. Even though the minister promised to use his considerable influence to cancel the project, it would probably take more than a few months before it would be completely scrapped. At the very least, it would probably take 1 or 2 years. For the villagers to officially hear that the village wasn't going to be submerged at the bottom of the dam was still a ways away. But there's no mistake that the promise of peace returning to the village was there. It turned out, from the beginning to end, it had already been all decided. Just as the girl had said, it was decided. There really wasn't a need for me to come here in the first place. There was absolutely no need for me to have come here and aggravated an unpleasant situation. If I had never come here, then the grandson's release might have been done in a more amicable manner.
平和が
Yeah, she's like, oh, not peace.
この村に
When I nodded, she laughed as if to admonish me. But her face remained indifferent and expressionless. Oh. And then her eyes narrowed slightly and she snickered. God, it's so creepy when you go creepy mode.
これから毎年血生臭いことが起きるのに
Oh, jeez. Hey, I want to see actually real quick. Oh. So I was wondering if I had different style pictures for this scene, but it doesn't look like it does. Oh, no.
リカちゃん。何の話だい？
As the wind blew her hair about the girl, as if taking pleasure in that, I was the only one who didn't know. Continued to snicker as she looked at my face for a while.
私ねあと何年かすると殺されるの
Okay. So she's saying she just inevitably dies. So that's implying that every story we've seen, she's died in. We didn't see it in chapter 1, but she did vanish. Chapter 2, we know she dies at the hands of Mion. And in chapter 3, we find her corpse sitting at the place. So that does imply that she dies in every single one. Why? Huh? Backlit by the moon, it was hard to tell if that expression had been cast in shadow, was smiling, amused, or resigned.
リカちゃんが。どうして？
とても不愉快なことだけどそれも多分決まってることなの
Really?
決まっているって。誰がそんなことを決めるんだい？
それを私も知りたいの
Turning back to face me, she showed me a resolute expression for the first time. After staring into my eyes for a moment, she turned back to gaze at the scenery before she spoke her next words.
ここは人の命を何とも思わない連中でいっぱいです
Okay.
これを伝えても何も変わらないかもしれないけど
Interesting.
でも死という月を映す水面をかき消すためなら小石を投じることもあるかもしれない
So is this Rika slash whatever this second Rika is, attempt to potentially avoid that problem? Maybe, so that means if we play through the next few chapters, maybe if there's one that allows for people to move forward without, like, and maybe breaking the cycle of death and allowing her to live, Akasaka is going to be a part of it somehow. I had no idea what she was trying to say. It just, I had to listen to every word from the body and soul, or at least that's what I thought.
来年の今日そう昭和54年の6月の今日ダム現場の監督が殺されます
Oh, wait. So this isn't the Watanagashi where he dies. It'll be next year's. Okay. So I had the timeline a bit wrong. But it'll be the death knell to the project. For a moment, I couldn't comprehend what she was talking about. By the foreman, did she mean the gruff old man I played mahjong with?
殺されるって。どうして。
She didn't answer, but she had the same expression on her face as she did when she declared that the dam project would go away. That wasn't the face of somebody making a forecast or a prediction. It was something that had already been decided. No, it was as if she was already reporting the result. That sort of expression.
恐ろしい殺され方をした後、体中を
Ugh.
バラバ
バラバラ殺人。
その翌年の昭和55年の6月の今日、聡子の両親が突き落とされて死にます。
Pushed to their deaths. Satoko? It was the first time I'd heard that name, but I didn't have the courage to interrupt the girl's story. Yeah, because I don't think she's talking to you, but she's talking to us. That's the thing. This is like, it's almost interesting. I was saying before, like maybe Akasaka would be involved if he could potentially disrupt things, but wouldn't it be really interesting if actually this message was to the reader and we're the ones that might be able to change the future somehow, now that we're giving this information?
あるいは事故と言うべきかもしれない不幸な事故。
Really? The girl smiled faintly, but she wasn't exactly encouraging me to smile along with the lifeless look in her eyes.
そしてさらにその翌年の昭和56年の6月の今日、
Her parents.
私の両親が殺されます。そしてさらに翌年の昭和57年の6月の今日、聡子の意地悪おばが頭を割られて死にます。そしてさらに翌年の昭和58年の6月の今日、
That's the year.
あるいはその数日後か、私が殺されます。すべての死が予定調和なら、最後の死もまた予定のうちなのでしょうか。
All according to plan. Whose plan?
でもならばこれは一体
Yeah,
誰の予定なの？
that's the thing. Like, why, if it's all preordained, like, who's the ordainer? And why? Because, like, if there's anybody who would be ordaining it, like, I feel like it would be you. Because you're, like, the one person who never got really that involved in anything. So, if it's not you, then who? The village was full of murderers and people who have no regard for human life. It would be fine to believe that all the deaths up to 1982 would be the work of somebody in the village. It would be fine to believe that all the deaths that would occur were the direction of those who controlled the village. But that didn't explain what would happen in 1983. There was no way for that last death would fit with anybody's plans. Exactly. In fact, it doesn't, because it could be different too. They had no regard for human life. They would use every means at their disposal to meet their goals. But their goals were at odds with the last death. That's why the last death was unrelated to them. But that last death would definitely, most likely, probably, without question, happen. Probably, definitely, I dare say. Clear as mud. The last death would be a merciful one. A handkerchief or something being placed over their mouth, making them lose consciousness, never to wake up again. Exactly whose plan was that?
私は幸せに生きたい。
Yeah, I want you to as well.
望みはそれだけ。大好きな友人たちに囲まれて、楽しく日々を過ごしたい。
It's actually the wish of Keiichi, too. Like, it's almost exactly the words he said.
それだけなの。それ以上の何も望んでいないの。
リカちゃん。
死にたくない。
The girl, stoic as ever, let those last words slip in the end. Interesting. Eventually, we were discovered by some drunks. The girl, as well as I, were dragged back to the festivities. Everybody was completely drunk, so even when they saw my head completely wrapped in bandages, they wouldn't let me leave. Well, certainly, if I was in good enough condition to slip out of the hospital, it must not have been that serious. The girl was mingling with everybody, being pampered like a kitten. Her expression was adorable, nothing like the one just from before, predicting her own death and whispering that she didn't want to die. Having said that, having a silly and lively conversation like this, it was hard to believe that these people were at the core of the extreme resistance group. Even if it was the shell of its former self, there was the festival where people in the village gathered, so the 20-some-odd folks here should have included some of the village's executives and other important members. Among those, there was no doubt there were members that were at the Sonozaki family council in attendance. Meaning, even if I were never to meet face-to-face before, these were people who knew my identity. In a small village like this, they knew the faces of all the villagers that lived here. That's why, without even saying anything, it soon became obvious that I was an outsider. But they actually seemed interested by that, asking me all sorts of questions about Tokyo. Drinking while musing on the faint relationship the city had with the villagers and emphasizing that with the rather meager environment. The confidential talks with the minister were finished, the grandson was in police custody, everything was over. I might not have been put into another perilous situation. To me, these were only my adversaries because of my job. Outside of that, there's no reason I couldn't be friendly with them. The next time I visited this village, would I return to being a tranquil and beautiful place? If that happened, I might be able to relax and walk around the village with her again. My cup was once again filled to the brim with beer. By the time I was able to get away, it was in the middle of the night. The girl had at some point disappeared. It seemed that her parents had told her to go home and sleep when she let out a large yawn. The old folks, who had absolutely no remorse for making an injured person hang out with them, told me as much as they laughed. It was just their drinking, so I had thought to help with a bit of the cleanup. However, with my help was refused on the grounds I was a guest. On top of that, they had a car prepared to take me back to the hospital. Interesting. Losing the battle against my sleepiness inside the car, I was sound asleep until we reached the parking lot of the hospital. The front door of the hospital was naturally locked at this hour. I wandered around bewilderedly, searching for a back entrance until somebody on night duty found out and let me inside.
こんな時間までどちらへ？入江先生も心配してましたよ。
Yeah, I bet.
ご迷惑をおかけしました。神社でお祭りの人たちに引き止められまして。
ああ、そういえば今日は神社で町会の人たちが集まって飲むとか言ってたな。それはご愁傷様でした。傷は大丈夫ですか？
ちょっとズキズキしますね。多分アルコールのせいだと思います。
Probably.
そうだ。お連れの刑事さんが連絡が欲しいと言ってましたよ。
いけない。大石さんを待たせてたんだった。
I glanced at the clock. No matter how you looked at it, it was way too late to call him now. I'll apologize to him tomorrow over the phone. I returned back to my hospital room and slipped into the bed that was still unmade from the time I went outside. Oh, that's not good. I have to turn off the lights. But my weariness had cut the cord powering my body, lulling me into a deep sleep. The room looks different than the last time. Like, is that intentional that they changed, like, the room layout? Because they're just using different art for it. Like, why would they do that? That's, like, odd. Alright, new tips. A Mother's Diary 1, 2, 3. Prophecy at the beginning. Here's someone's prediction. Alright, interesting. Alright, let's read these tips. Mother's Diary. There was something I didn't like about my child. I first realized it when I started writing these things down. They never warn you about it in any books about raising children, but they aren't just a plaything. They aren't able to feel loved even when they're not doing exactly as their parents want them to. Then those parents are failures. This wasn't something like that, though. How can I say it? It's probably harder to express it with mere words. I just wanted my child to be average. As long as they weren't falling behind, there wasn't any need for them to excel at something. As long as they acted appropriately for their age, I would have been fine with it. But my child had been different ever since kindergarten. While the children in her class were running around in excitement about the field trip the next day, she only wore a bored look on her face, aloof and distant. When other kids broke the equipment for the athletics festival and were apologizing fervently, she only wore a bored look on her face, aloof and distant. When the teacher was reading a fun picture book, only she wasn't smiling. Even if they all got to eat a delicious bento, only she wasn't happy. If it was only this, it would still be in the realm of understanding. However, what I don't understand about my child is that in the aforementioned situations happened again, they'd now act in a manner befitting their age. I don't understand the principle behind that as a parent. Why were they indifferent about the field trip but happy about this one? Oh, you know what that trend sounds to me? That sounds like the trend of a psychopath. Psychopaths don't have empathy. Or at least they don't feel empathy. They don't have empathy or emotions in this way that other people do. They can disassociate or just naturally are disassociated, which is why they can tend to do terrible things like murder and not feel bad because they don't feel compassion like that. They are kind of their own central universe, and like the feelings of others don't matter. They see other people like we see ants. Because to us, ants are just indifferent. Like, if anything, they're pests to be controlled or driven out of your house. And psychopaths see people like that. A hallmark of a psychopath is that they learn to emulate emotions so they can better fit in and associate with other people. But the first time they experience something, they might not express any emotions at all because they don't feel any emotions. At least not emotions that matter to them. So what's happening here is the child is seeing something, seeing how others behave, and then the next time that happens, they emulate that behavior. Why were they indifferent about the picture book but happy about this one? Why were they indifferent about that bento and happy about this one? The former and the latter in each situation seemed exactly the same to me. There was even times when I thought the former one was better. I don't understand the child's feelings. During parent-teacher meetings, the teacher always says the same thing. And I would always respond that I don't understand my own child, and we would mope together. My husband, always the optimist, once said the young child's feelings are different from an adult, so there were some things we didn't understand, we shouldn't worry about it. I lament his lack of urgency. One day, when I was in a good mood, I took the effort to prepare a menu my child would enjoy, but she only smiled with a vague expression of disinterest. That attitude frankly made me angry, so I hit her on the head. Then on the day when the weather was nice, the laundry I had just hung up to dry was blown by a large gust of wind, causing the entire line to fall down. But she, watching me try to pick up the laundry in a panic, stood there laughing. That attitude frankly made me angry, so I hit her on the head. I think the same sort of thing happened countless times. Before I knew it, my child was only able to look at me with an indifferent expression on her face. I regret the fact that I've been a bad mother. Thinking I should regain her trust, I thought to get it back little by little with light interactions. Seeing her do some sort of craft work on the veranda, I called out to her.
ここ数日、気持ちのいい晴れの日が続いて、気分がいいわね。
Rika's the psychopath. That child with the indifferent look on her face I hated so much looked up at me for a moment, then without a word returned to immersing herself in a craft work. Up until now, I would have hit her on the head just for that. I held myself back.
何を作ってるの？お人形さん？てるてる坊主。
Oh, okay, one of those little, like, ghost things, right? The child was using inserts from newspapers to deftly make some weather charms. The forecast hadn't called for rain, but that child in her own way was praying that these sunny days would continue. Being able to understand my own child for the first time in a while, I couldn't hide my own happiness. Bringing about a ball of yarn, I began to hang my child's cute weather charms from the eaves of the house.
ダメよ、リカ。頭が重すぎるから。ほら、逆さてるてる坊主になっちゃったわ。これじゃ、晴れじゃなくて、雨になっちゃうわよ。
When I started to take them down, my child tugged at the hem of my skirt as if to stop me.
逆さになるように作ったのだから、それでいいの。
She wants it to rain.
でもリカ、てるてる坊主が逆さじゃ、晴れのおまじないにならないわよ。雨が降るようにおまじないをしているから、それでいいの。
Interesting. The charm for rain. And when do we see big events occur? In the rain. I desperately suppressed the emotions welling up inside me. I was trying desperately to understand my child.
そっか。お庭の朝顔が晴れ続きで元気がなくなっちゃったから、雨が欲しいのね。
Well, there's also the fact that some people like me just like the rain. That child turned to me with an expression that I hated the most.
晴れにね。飽きたの。
I don't understand. I don't understand. I just can't understand that child. Interesting. So that makes me think that she's a psychopath. That would explain a lot too, because she's been a master manipulator, right? And that's part of what makes psychopaths so dangerous, is that they learn how to move people's emotions and to change and to control the way that people perceive them, which is why they tend to be described as being charming and charismatic is because they learn how to make people think things, certain things, or behave certain ways, because that's how they interact with the world. Diary number 2. Oh, interesting. During the family council, she buried herself under Oryo-san's futon again. Oryo-san dotes on her unwaveringly. No matter whatever insolence my child commits, she doesn't mind. It's almost as though my child is a kitten or something. Oryo dotes on her exactly like you would with a kitten. As her mother, I chided her for doing that. Until Oryo-san had said 3 times that it was fine, I chided her as a formality. Of course, she never lends me an ear to any of my chidings. Knowing that Oryo's standing was far above mine, she behaves like that. I don't like the cunning that's unbefitting her age either. In any case, it's not only Oryo, but the rest of the old folk in the village spoil her too much. One day I was surprised. By chance, on their way back from shopping, I saw her by herself just outside the candy shop. My own child suddenly grabbed a snack, opened the package right there, and started eating it. She didn't make any attempt to pay for it. She didn't even think about looking around. I didn't even feel like she was shoplifting, more like she was brazenly eating snacks that were offered to her. When I began to admonish my child, the elderly shop owner appeared and covered for her. The owner gave the ridiculous excuse that she had said it was okay for the child to eat any of the snacks out by the entrance, so it was fine. When I tried to pay for the snacks that my child had eaten, the owner refused my money. During that exchange, more old folks had suddenly gathered around, and it began to feel like I was the one in the wrong. The elderly people all put their hands together reverently in front of my child and repeatedly voiced their respects. I was born into the Furude family, so it wasn't like I didn't know why she was being treated specially. When I was still young, I was something I heard often from my grandmother. If by chance the child I gave birth to was a girl, the child would be living incarnation of Oryoshiro-sama. All the older folks believed she was the living incarnation of Oryoshiro-sama and spoiled her rotten. And not only did they spoil her, but they even told her she was the living incarnation of Oryoshiro-sama, that she had a divine power, and threw all sorts of strange folk tales her way. So she may have begun to believe herself that she was a special existence. I went around and told everybody it wasn't good for her upbringing, so to stop telling her all these strange things, but there was no uprooting the elderly people's deep-seated superstitions. I told my child not to listen to them, but it ended up being that she stopped listening to me. Between all the old folks in the village who would dote on her and myself who only scolded her, there was no wonder she would listen to. There was no mistaking that the reason she'd become strange was because of the elderly villagers. There was no doubt that they had shoved her full of strange folk tales and superstitions since she was young. If it wasn't for that, there's no doubt my child would have been cute and normal. I don't know, she seemed like she was strange from the beginning. Mother's Diary 3, here we go. This is going to be the one that has all the really weird stuff, right? One sunny parent-teacher day. There was a cooking class, and my child was making curry rice with a practiced hand. While the other children her age were awkwardly using their kitchen knives, that children were wielding hers deftly. The teacher approached me with a smile on my face, saying it must be the result of learning it at home. I managed to play it off as a vague smile and a nod in response. That was because I had never once taught my child how to make curry rice. Even then, she was peeling vegetables with a practiced hand, adding them to the pot in order of which it took longer to cook. For a normal parent, they might unintentionally clap their hands together, happy at their child's actions. But in my case, it was different. There was no mistaking that somebody had taught her how to make that curry rice when I wasn't taking care of her. Thinking that, I quickly fell into an uneasy mood. When I asked, it seemed she could also sew and do laundry. I'd never taught her to do those, and again, never saw her do it around the house. Be it cooking or sewing or the laundry. Again, that was probably because the elderly villagers taught her all sorts of rubbish when I wasn't looking. And not only that, they probably taught her all sorts of strange superstitions, trying to prop her up as the living incarnation of Oryoshiro-sama. I said as much to my husband, suggesting we should keep the child away from the elderly folk. But my husband, who was in a position of being at the head priest of the Furude Shrine, had little power over the elderly who supported it. He took a rather uncommitted stance of saying that as long as she was being doted upon, wasn't it fine? I argued against that. Since she was our child, she should be a completely normal girl. And what the elderly were expecting, and that she was living incarnation of Oryoshiro-sama, was simply odd. The elderly villagers believe the child has divine powers. We would discuss the weather in the following day, but there were many times when I left the house without an umbrella and came back soaking wet. Rather than being clairvoyance, it was just secondhand knowledge from her watching the news all the time. The things that she knew that she shouldn't have known were just the result of people who were trying to indoctrinate her and the people who were gossiping and getting together in the village. However, there certainly were days where everybody thought it was going to be sunny all day and the child would stubbornly not go outside without an umbrella. It would occasionally rain, and in the end, we would be saved. There might also have been times where Rika knew of major accidents in foreign countries faster than the news did. I thought that she must have heard it break over the radio or something. Knowing things she shouldn't have, something like that, was in front of me right now, wasn't it? The child was making curry rice where there shouldn't have been anybody who taught her how. No, that couldn't possibly be the case. Somebody taught her, indoctrinated her. When I wasn't taking care of her, somebody had indoctrinated Rika with something.
フルデさんのカレーは大変見事です。
It's still Che.
先生、花丸をあげちゃいます。ニパー。フルデさんはお料理を誰に習いましたか？やっぱりお家で？はい、お家なのですよ。
Huh. The other parents and attendants were impressed. Lies, all lies. I didn't teach her anything. Who was it? Who was the person who had completely indoctrinated my child? She was my normal average daughter, not the living incarnation of Oyashiro-sama. But she might be. Because that's really weird. Read all the tips. Okay. Alright. So that implies that the next chapter is the last, because that's the end of the tips. So next week we will do the next chapter, and depending on its length, we might do whatever the after party thing is. Or we might separate that into 2 videos. Well, I'll see. It depends on how I'm feeling at the time, how much time I have to record and all that. But that's very interesting. This is the strongest, like, just direct evidence of the curse being a real thing. But it's nice, too, because those tips and the mom's responses played into the idea that there are still potential explanations that could be going on, but also pointing out that it's really weird, and it's weird that she's lying about it. I do think that Rika now is a psychopath. Because here's the thing. A way you also need to understand about psychopaths, they're more common than you think. I think it's like 1 in every, 200 people has psychopathic tendencies. And 1 in every 200,000 is like a flat-out psychopath. Not all psychopaths go bad. In fact, sometimes psychopaths are really necessary for important things, like critical decision-making. I think there's a story that I remember hearing in psychology class that, again, I'm not 100% confident it's 100% true, but I remember we learned about it in class, and I think it was being read in the book, and it was about a researcher who was studying psychopaths. So he went to various jails and interviewed hundreds of murderers, right? Identified those he thought were psychopaths, and he did a study where he studied, he made a quiz to talk about how they see the world, and then compared it to was able to kind of garnish this idea of a profile that a psychopath answers specific questions in a certain way. And then he started doing studies of the general public, using his students primarily as his first test subjects. So he'd have all of his students in his psych classes come in and take this quiz and answer the questions, and he would just kind of see what the results would be. And he was shocked to immediately find that there was somebody in his class who was testing positively, blatantly hitting all the keynotes for being a psychopath. And he was like, holy cow, I need to figure out who this person is. And so he started doing some regressive, because he did it as a blind test at first. And he started doing these smaller batch tests to try and identify the actual person, because he was worried, if they didn't know, maybe if he could help them find out who they were, maybe he could prevent them from going down a dark path or something. So he's able to slowly whittle it down until he finally realized that the person who had passed his test as a psychopath was him. He had been the psychopath the entire time. And then he started looking at the conversations he'd had with these people and realized that he had related with them in a lot of ways because they saw things the way he did. But he'd never murdered anybody, never felt like he could murder anybody. It was that he was a psychopath who just didn't feel the urge to remove unpleasant people from his life. But the problem was is that eventually in his life, if somebody annoyed him or got to the point where he felt like it would be better if they weren't there, he might be able to make that decision. And I think they said that later they did other studies with these types of tests, and they figure that other people who jobs that tend to attract psychopaths tend to be police officers and investigators and PIs, because because not having empathy can be a very helpful thing when you're invading people's spaces and having to see the worst of other people. It doesn't have as much wear and tear on you, and so you can do those jobs better. In fact, you can often think in the thoughts of the person who does a crime because they think like you do. So there's something to be said about that. Psychopathy is really interesting, and being a psychopath doesn't mean you're just going to be a terrible person who commits terrible crimes. Just means you have more capacity for it because of the lack of empathy. In fact, I feel like I heard another thing that said the psychopaths have been some of the most important things in our past, because sometimes you need people who can commit war crimes. People have been needed at those time periods. People have been needed to fight without remorse. People have been needed to be able to kill without feeling regret. To be able to defend homelands and be able to conquer lands and establish territory. Necessary is a vague word there, but the idea that many kingdoms of the ancient world were established likely by psychopaths who were able to detach themselves from emotion and make decisions that were just algorithmically correct, even if they were awful in execution. It doesn't justify their actions, nor justify the actions of any psychopath. It's just this idea that it's probably not an accident that we evolved to have psychopaths among us. It's probably good that there aren't too many of us, but they're there. So, yeah, it's interesting. Anyway, thank you all so much for being here today. Thank you so much for joining me on the channel. I appreciate you all being here and enjoying this with me. I've certainly enjoyed it. So, next episode will be either the second to last or the last episode of this chapter, and then we finally get to jump into the answers section, and maybe we actually get to figure some stuff out in concrete ways, right? I feel like we're getting kind of close to the end. How many chapters are there total? Is it 8, 7? I think it's 8. If there's 8, then we're at the halfway point. So yeah, interesting. Man, we've been doing these for a while. This is episode 56, I think. So yeah, if we're at the halfway point and we keep this pace, then we're going to go over 100 for sure. This will be really interesting. But I'm happy to do so. I've definitely been enjoying it, and it's been a pleasure to share it. Thank you so much, especially to the support of you who are watching, who leave likes and comments, and especially those who are patrons and members of the channel. I mean, the fact that you're still here, the man that you do this, it means the world to me. So thank you. Hopefully I continue to make content that keeps you coming back, and hopefully we can reach out and help other people enjoy content as well, that we can, keep growing our community and making it better and stronger, and, helping shine a light on stories that really should be experienced by more people that sadly don't get noticed as much. But I'm grateful to be here with you all. Thank you so much, and until next video, watching me up, see me in next. I'll see you there.